This video is about why I quit my job and how I exited the matrix and how you can do the same. Because believe it or not, it isn't as difficult as you think, or at least it isn't as difficult as you're being led to believe. So it's about 6 years, almost to the day, that I quit my job and I quit my career. And it was a massive step. And it came at just the right time because it was around 2019. And well, it was in 2019. And then several months later, the world went upside down. And I actually benefited from that financially, which I'll talk about in a moment. And yeah, I was working a job in the public sector and I was working shifts. So sometimes I'd start at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'd finish at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then sometimes I'd start at 4 and finish at midnight, and I'd start at 11 p.m. and finish at 7 in the morning. So I had to work nights as well. That included working weekends, holidays, public holidays, Christmas, New Year. For over a decade, I didn't have the August bank holiday off. In the UK, at the end of August, there's like a big bank holiday when the Notting Hill Carnival is, if you've heard of that. And yeah, I worked that every year. So I missed out on going to the carnival and going to a lot of festivals that happen on that weekend. But now I don't have to worry about that. So I had a bad day and it'd been bubbling up for a while. I'm not going to lie to you. And I went home, spoke to my partner and said, look, I've had enough. I'm quitting. So I sent a text message to my supervisor and just said, I'm not coming in. I'm done. And then I got put on a bit of gardening leave while I completed the resignation paperwork. And then that was it, really. And my life got better. I took on financial risk by quitting my job. But the important thing for you folks to know is that I had a plan B. Now, that wasn't, I'd got another job with another employer I'd been interviewing. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur, by definition, I think is someone who takes financial risk with the possibility of financial reward. And for as long as I can remember, that's what I wanted to do, not for the financial risk or the financial reward, but because I wanted to be my own man. I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want to have to answer to anybody. I didn't want to have to be somewhere at a certain time and have to ask the boss if I can go home. And when you want to try and take vacation time, you have to look through the roster. And if there's too many people off at the same time, then it means I can't do it. And then I have to change my plans and my partner has to change their plans and the other people have to change their plans. It just wasn't for me. That's not to say that I'm like a maverick or anything, but a lot of you will know that some people just don't, what's the way to describe this? They don't want to be governed or bossed around and told what to do. You want to be free to make decisions that benefit you and that make your life better. And when you're employed and you have a boss and you work for an organization, it doesn't always work like that. Now, I know plenty of people who are employed and they love their jobs, but that just wasn't for me. Wearing a uniform and being told what to do and not really having the independence that I think you need as a human being. So my plan B was setting up a website selling products, an e-commerce business. And I've been thinking about it for probably about a decade, but I wasn't sitting around actively manifesting it, but I did have a visual goal in my mind and a lifestyle that I wanted to live. But it took me about 10 years to find a product that you can get and sell and make money on. Nowadays, you have to ship everything for free and you've got Amazon and eBay. So it's a competitive market and a competitive economy. But at the same time, with the internet and technology, everything is almost instant and you can run a business from anywhere in the world and sell things in anywhere of the world and buy things from anywhere. Like a lot of people who watch my videos are actually in the USA. in South Africa, Australia, Germany, as well as in the UK. So everything's instant and everything can be shared. But I'd had enough and I took a big risk. But the important thing is that when I took the risk about quitting my job and taking on additional financial risk, I just had a knowing that it would work. I didn't have any doubt. I never doubted myself for a second. I never thought, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? What happens if I don't sell anything? How are people going to find my website? A lot of that stuff I covered off by gaining knowledge. And if any of you have ever started a website, the one thing that I used to ask myself was, how is anybody going to find it? If you could have the best website in the world, me and you could go into business tomorrow, invest a load of money, and the following day after the website goes live, no one will be clicking on it. So how do people find your business in the first place? So I had to do a lot of studying, a lot of investigation, and a lot of research. So that's what I'm getting to, is that you can have an end goal. I want to be an entrepreneur. But how do you get from 0, where you are now, to 100, which is where you want to be, your goal that you want to realize? A good way of describing it is, imagine you want to work in a museum, the Natural History Museum in London, and you want to be the curator, but you're still a high school student, or you've got you're a bus driver or something. How are you going to go from being a bus driver to working at the British Museum? Well, you have an end goal that you visualize in your mind with a slide, and you think about it, a lot of the time. But in between where you are now and being that person who works at the museum, you're going to need to figure out some steps. And it's probably going to involve getting a high school diploma and getting good grades. And then the next step will be going to college and studying history. The step after that is going to be probably a postgraduate degree and a PhD, and then getting some experience and then getting the job. You can't just go from what it is that you're doing and trying to manifest an outcome without bridging the gap, if you see what I mean. So I broke all that down and went from where I was to where I wanted to be and broke it up into small steps. And it didn't happen overnight. When we talk about manifesting, the connotations of that sometimes mean that like doing a seance, or sitting around doing a ritual like a wizard or a witch. And then you just conjure something up instantly. But it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it can work like that, but for long-term goals, which are a distance away, not just in time, but in skills and maybe finances from where you are, then it takes time for those to realize into this 3D material world. And for me, it took about 15 years. And the skeptics now will be saying, well, that doesn't sound like manifesting. It sounds like maybe you just worked on it. Yeah, I did work on it, but I was always visualizing it and embodying a personality and a state of being that it was that I wanted to assume. And I wasn't even doing that intentionally. This was before I even knew that the way that I was thinking was actually a real thing, which we call manifesting. And things take longer to materialize in our world, in your world, because of inertia. Things take a while. When you dream, and if you've ever experienced lucid dreaming, you can think about something and it will happen instantly. But our reality doesn't work like that, sadly. So things take time, and that's okay. But it's important to acknowledge that things do take time and things won't always happen quickly. So I exited the matrix and I never looked back. And I've been happier ever since. And I've gained more financial independence and abundance during 2020 and maybe 2021 as well. I can't remember. If you were renting like a shop premises or a warehouse or a storage facility or something like that. During lockdown in the UK, our government was basically just handing money out like confetti. And I took a lease on a small storage facility where I was storing products. And because I got locked down, like everybody did, the government just threw £10,000 at me. And that was purely because I had a lease, and I had to prove that I had a lease and that I was a proprietor or the tenant. So that's about $12,000, $13,000. The government just gave it to me straight away. I didn't even have to ask for it. I didn't have to fill out any paperwork. I just had to send my lease off. And then while I was locked down, the government were paying about £1,000 a month for maybe 6 months. So that's about $1,200, $1,300 a month. Again, I didn't even have to ask for it. They were just depositing it into my bank. But that wasn't just me. That was anybody who had a lease or owned a shop or something like that. So that's just an example that I quit my job, and then the world went upside down, and I did have anxiety for a moment, but I didn't have any doubt. I had a lot of apprehension, but then it turned out that it worked out purely because the government were dishing out all this cash. And I got lucky, really, you could say, that they were handing out this money, and I actually profited from the money that they were handing out because my overheads were so low because the business was in its infancy that I didn't need the money to keep the business afloat. So I just saved it basically and invested it into other things. So that's a good example of how everything kind of can happen for a reason. And if you don't doubt yourself, and you don't have limited beliefs, and you don't doubt your decision making, then anything can happen. And you can exit the matrix too, if that's what you want to do. I'm shaking now because I'm cold. It's cold outside. But the snowdrops and daffodils and stuff are starting to grow. So that's pretty. But a bit like in the Matrix, the movie, not everyone is ready to be unplugged. And that's not just from a realization of what reality is perspective, but also most people out there want to be controlled. They want to turn up to work. They want to have someone tell them what to do. They want to know that there's a guaranteed paycheck at the end of the month because it provides them with security and it makes them feel safe. And as human beings, we love to be safe. Sorry, my dog's chewing something. He's making a noise. I don't know if you can hear it. Monty, you gonna lie down? Over here, good boy. So people like a safety net and they like to feel safe. And that's why sometimes people live in a house and they might live in the same house for 40 years because they don't want to risk moving. I've moved around to different properties. I've quit jobs previously. I've changed roles and moved sideways. And then I just decided to jack it all in. And I have absolutely no regrets. And I never doubted that it would work. And I never doubted that I wouldn't be financially stable. Another thing for you to note, and just to hear, to be honest with you, is that quitting your job and being an entrepreneur and going alone doesn't mean that you have to be like a Gordon Gekko or Wolf of Wall Street type character. It doesn't instantly mean, okay, I was employed and now I'm self-employed and an entrepreneur. So it means that I need to be earning $10,000, $20,000 a month. There are lots of these videos on YouTube that say you can be an e-commerce dropshipper and earn £10,000 a week. Yeah, you can do that. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. But you have to set yourself realistic goals and also ask yourself what it is that you want and how much money you're comfortable earning and how much you actually believe that you need. Because once you reach a kind of a critical mass, you don't need as much money as you think. And it's not necessary to work 40, 50 hours a week forever until the age of 67 or whatever the retirement age is where you are. And then look forward to kind of having high blood pressure and being on medication. through your retirement. Exiting the matrix for you is the first step in getting on the road to realizing your goal. Because when you unplug psychologically, you start seeing things differently, much the same way as Neo. You see things differently, you feel differently, you approach everything differently. And I'm grateful that it's worked out for me. I didn't have any doubts, like I've said. And I had goals, which were not necessarily concrete goals, but you do need goals. A lot of people, you probably heard this kind of sentiment where people say, oh, I want to keep working because as soon as I stop working, I'll start mentally degenerating or I'll get bored. Yeah, that there is some truth to that. But human beings need goals. I need goals. And I've done loads of stuff over the years where I've just set myself a goal. And you might find yourself that if you're feeling lost, then by setting yourself a goal, it acts as like a beacon or a waypoint or a lighthouse. Lighthouses stop ships from crashing into the cliffs or into land. Having a goal stops you from crashing out, stops you from being bored. And it means that it's like connect the dots, the game that you play with a pen and pencil and a piece of paper, or dot to dot, whatever it was called. The first dot in front of you is the first waypoint. You get to that waypoint and then you find your second waypoint and it goes on and on and on. And then all those dots and waypoints and beacons are connected, and that is your desired reality realized. And you'll do it without even realizing it. It will just happen because you're fixated on each micro goal. But it is also important to have the general large goal outcome in the foreground. But it's not always the most important thing to be focusing on at the present time. So this was just my take on me quitting the matrix and how you can do the same, and how your life will change if you take ownership of it. And if you stop letting other people rule you and get yourself into a position where you can be at the driving seat, if that's what you want. And I appreciate that not everybody wants that, but I know a lot of you will. So I really hope that you've enjoyed my talk today in this video. And like always, please like and subscribe, even if you haven't enjoyed it. And like all of my videos, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.